Hey, it's Maria here. Good morning to you. If you're tuning in from Australia, it is about 4:36 a.m. But thankfully, I'm a morning person. It's good to see you all. It's good to be back. This week we were talking about, I was answering a question from Annie who was wondering if she's an INFJ or an INFP. And one of the challenges that she was facing was that she kept getting the different kinds of results. And it was, some parts of her were feeling like she was an INFJ, and then other parts of her were feeling like she was an INFP. And of course, getting the different results from the free online tests only confused her to a point where she was wondering, in more detail what her cognitive functionalities were, how she was showing up best in her everyday life and so on. So I wanted to jump here today to talk about something that somebody else asked me a question around my own personality profiling and how I came to the conclusion of my own types. And they were actually asking about both the MBTI and the Enneagram. So I'll just do a really quick overview of my own journey in this because it was actually not that dissimilar to Annie's. So if you don't know what I'm talking about, I'll post the link to Annie's question video in this post a little bit later on. So I had a really interesting time with personality profiling myself, and the reason was, as an INFJ, I can be a chameleon. I have a very high capacity to blend in and to be effectively what people wanted me to be. So from that perspective, just finding that true self and having that power to just, stake your claim and just say, this is who I am. It took me a really long time, just purely from that perspective. And the first profiling tool that I came across was the Enneagram. And I worked with the most wonderful lady in Ireland way back when. And we worked on my Enneagram type, and according to her, and I don't want to speak on her behalf because she was the professional, but there is a lot of on one way it was really difficult for her to type me, but on the other way it was very easy, and she typed me as type 2 on the Enneagram. And the reason why that was because I was exhibiting all the classic 2-ness kind of ways of being and ways of operating. And so off I went on my merry way, being a type 2 on the Enneagram, the helper, and just getting my life organized around that and respecting that and appreciating that and so on. And I kept doing that for about 15 years. And more recently, my managing partner, Lisa Payne, some of you might know her, she got herself qualified in the Enneagram, in the art of the Enneagram. And so I thought I would love to get her take on what was going on. And so we talked, and she did her magic, and it was very interesting. I was so determined on being a type 2 because that was who I had felt that I had been for a really long time, and genuinely showed up as. And at the end of our first session, she says something along the lines of, have you thought that maybe you might be a type 1? And I was just like, I think I just grew up in one culture, so I think that's what it is. So I didn't dismiss it, but it didn't feel like it was as relevant as sticking to the original diagnosis, if you like. So off I went that week, and we had a call set up for the next week, and everything started coming at me through the one lenses, and I was sitting there or standing or playing with the horses going like, this seems like very one type behavior. So I started to stick a crowbar into my mind and open it and then just kind of go, okay, well, let's try this one hat on for a while and see what happens and if it works and what kind of results it might yield for me. So it turned out that I had been living with this two facade for such a long time as a coping mechanism, as a survival mechanism, that I had become a type 2. And so I had created those neural pathways that made me behave and function as a type 2, even though I wasn't actually that. And what's really interesting about this is next week I'll be talking about, or on Monday I'll be talking about, the introversion and introspection and how much introspection is actually too much, and how, when do introverts or introspective extroverts take it too far so that it actually starts interfering with their lives and how they want to show up and what kind of industriousness they want to exhibit in their lives. So I had convinced my neural pathways that I was a 2 because of the certain coping mechanisms that I had learned. And for a really long time, because of that, I had then stopped actually being who I was. And instead, I was my coping mechanisms. So that was really interesting. Now, the other highlight I wanted to, or the other little story I wanted to put in here was, with these free tests, online MBTI tests, I often came out as an INFJ, an INFP, or an INTJ. And actually quite a few of them were INTJs. And it was very strange because, everybody gets to nominate their own MBTI type. That's just how the official MBTI actually works. So whatever you feel is your best fit type, that's your best fit type. So nobody else gets to kind of interfere with that, or shouldn't interfere with that process, only to help you discover your best fit type. So I was looking at the INTJ and I was reading it and I was like, yeah, I can kind of see that, but not really. But I'm wondering why I keep getting INTJ instead of INFJ. So being an introverted intuitive thinker, judger, instead of my actual type, which is an INFJ, which is introverted intuitive feeler, judger. So what I didn't know at the time was the oneness in my Enneagram. And so what I ended up doing was I ended up kind of rebelling against the thinking part, because the one is very thinking oriented as opposed to feeling oriented. And please, anybody who knows me knows that I don't mean that ones don't feel. Obviously ones feel, and obviously INTJs feel. That's not where I'm going with this. But what I am saying is that the oneness, the Enneagram one way of cognitively shifting and sorting through decisions and information collecting looks, or can look, very thinking oriented, because it's based on our bodies. So we are very body. The one is one of the body types. So it was really interesting and kind of understandable in hindsight why I was getting a lot of INTJs, because cognitive functionality, INFJs and INTJs have the same adult self, so the main function, and the same 3-year-old inner child, which is the fourth function. So those are the same functions, but the thinking decision making wasn't actually outward facing, which for me as an INFJ, which it is for an INTJ. So it didn't feel right, but I didn't know why initially. I just went like, you know what, my gut feeling's telling me that INFJ is the go. So I went with that. And in fact, that is true. That is a true representation of the MBTI stance, which is that you actually recognize your own best fit type yourself. You can have profilers such as myself helping you to do that, but you get to decide what feels like your best fit type. So that was really interesting. So yes, I've had a lot of kind of not confusion, but a lot of questions. For me, the profiling, both with the Enneagram and with the MBTI, hasn't been a direct line. So Annie, you know, for you it wasn't. For me, it also wasn't. And quite frankly, you know, with the evolution and with the new neural pathways that we keep creating for ourselves, we do eventually become quite fluent. If we continue our own personal development, we become quite fluent on all the 9 Enneagram ways of being, all of the 8 MBTI functionalities. So you know, anybody who might be out there and thinking they're worried that they have to get their type exactly right before they can do any work, that's not actually, what I'm saying is don't worry about that. It doesn't have to be perfect for it still to be meaningful, much like in everything else in life. And the moments of perfection, in my experience, are often found in the little facets of imperfection within that moment. So that's my debrief for this week's question. So Annie, you're not alone. It's okay to feel confused. It's okay to feel like, you know, you're not quite sure if you're an INFJ or an INFP. I do encourage you to continue to study if it's important to you to find out which you are, that you continue to study this within yourself. And I'm here if you need help. We do run, you know, self-decoding workshops that you can do at home. We run a full decoding process that offers a deeper dive into hidden facets as well. So there's a lot that can be done if you really feel like you need to jump into action and get some serious clarity on that MBTI type. All right. Thank you so much, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. If you're tuning in live, I can see you. Hi. Good to see you. And yeah, I'll talk to you real soon. Monday latest, we'll talk about the introspection and how we create new neural pathways. So I'll talk to you soon. Take care. Have a great weekend.